I have the perfect guest to speak to on this, Steny Ruhle, Democratic Congressman from Maryland and the House Majority Leader. Congressman, good morning. How close
Good morning,
are
Stephanie.
To getting to the end of this deposition process? And who else do you need to hear from?
Well, I think we're close. There are other witnesses that Adam Schiff and the committee are going to be calling. However, I don't want to put a time limit on it, but I think we're close. I think it was correct to say that we're trying to move expeditiously. We believe this matter ought to move along and not drag out. On the other hand, as you said, or as was said, we need to dot the I's and cross the T's. But I think you made the point as well. The Republicans want to talk about process, which I say is like a lawyer who has neither the law nor the facts on their side. They want to pound on the table. And that's what they're doing, pounding on the table. That's what yesterday was about, pounding on the table, an attempt to distract. And when I have asked Mr. Scalise or other Republicans, what do you think about the president asking a foreign leader to become involved in our elections? They never answer that question. They divert to some other comment about process or this. And you're right. Historically, we've had special prosecutors in these cases that have conducted the investigation, and we are in the investigation phase in camera, in private. And you're also right, when the Republicans talk about these secret hearings, I laugh, because 47 Republicans have the opportunity to be in the room. They're authorized to be in the room at the time testimony is taken. The members of the committee are authorized equal time to ask questions of witnesses. And very frankly, the rules that are being done that they complain about asking witnesses to come testify are rules that were put in our rules by Mr. Pompeo and Trey Gowdy. So these are Republican rules that we adopted our own rules in terms of the issuance of subpoenas. But the important issue is everybody's going to have public testimony. They're going to see public testimony. They'll be either able to read or to hear all of the testimony that has been given and that will be given. So these are going to be, as we do, in a due process way, consistent with the Constitution, consistent with the laws.
How about testimony?
And the key is ultimately going to be substance.
How about testimony from Rudy Giuliani or Rick Perry? Any progress there?
I can't speak to whether we've had progress. Obviously, both of them would be important witnesses that the committee would like to hear from in terms to flesh out this full story. Now, whether they're going to cooperate or not, we'll see. And by the way, Stephanie, one of the issues in this entire oversight responsibility that the Congress is exercising is the refusal of the President of the United States and the administration to cooperate. Unlike the Clinton administration, unlike the Obama administration previously. So when they talk about process, they are obstructing process.
Well, the White House says we're not going to cooperate until you hold a vote. Let's say Nancy Pelosi holds a vote. Do you actually believe the White House is going to play ball?
Absolutely not. Hold a vote, have the process, have witnesses, have this witness, have that contingency met. It would always be something new. They're going to get a vote. They're going to get a vote on the floor. That's the only way impeachment can happen. It has to be, and it'll be a public vote. And they will have to stand up and say that they either going to give a license to a president of the United States to do the things that will be asserted if, in fact, we find those facts, or not.
How about getting a say?
I think they think they're going to be in a tough situation because that's why the Republicans don't want to stop and defend the actions. All they want to do is talk about process.
Okay, well, then let's talk about that. How about the president getting a say or a chance to defend himself? His supporters are arguing he will not have a chance to do that. Will he?
That's what his supporters are saying. And frankly, Chief Justice Roberts will preside over the trial. Senator McConnell will be in charge of much of the procedure, although the Supreme Court Justice Roberts will be in charge of running the trial. And that's in America, as you pointed out earlier, where you get the chance to call witnesses, to present evidence, to cross-examine the people who are asserting wrongdoing. That's when you get that chance. Not now. The special prosecutor, you mentioned Ken Starr, but Cox, Archibald Cox, who quit, of course, during the Nixon impeachment process. And, of course, Nixon was never impeached because he resigned because the facts kept escalating, as is happening today. Now, I don't expect the president to resign, but every day the facts that are coming out prove the assertions that have been made.
Okay, but Congressman, what happens? Yeah. Every day we keep hearing, to your exact point, that more and more damning information comes out. The truth is, the Mueller report was chock full of 400 pages of damning information, and that thing has been pushed aside. What if all of this comes out and nothing happens, and Republicans don't budge? What's your strategy then?
Well, the strategies, we're going to move forward, dictated by the facts, to do our constitutional duty. Alexander Hamilton made it very clear the reason impeachment was included and conviction trial in the Senate was because they were afraid of the abuse of power. They wanted to make sure that no person, even the President of the United States, was above the law. They wanted to make sure that there was a way that the public could protect themselves against the abuse of power. They did not want a King George to come back. And that is why we have this authority in the Constitution. We're going to exercise it in a responsible, thoughtful way. As you know, there were a lot of people wanting us to rush to judgment months and months ago, year ago. That didn't happen. And then there was an aha moment, as I call it, Stephanie, a time when clearly on the facts, the President of the United States asked a foreign leader to intervene in our elections. The American public decided that was wrong. That's why the polls now reflect a significant majority support in the American people for the investigation, for the inquiry, so that we have done this in the way that I think our framers had in mind. It's ironic that the president called the Emoluments Clause, sort of a fake constitutional provision. That was not a fake constitutional provision. Again, they wanted to guard against foreign influence in our domestic politics.
How about your other day job, legislative agenda? While all of this impeachment inquiry is going on, what are you working on? Is it USMCA? Are you working with Republicans to get the government funded? What else is happening?
Well, we're doing a lot, and we've done a lot in the first part of this year. We passed, first of all, government was shut down. We opened it up. It took us 30 days to do so. The wall was the problem, but we got government opened up. We then passed one of the most significant reform bills that has been passed in years, H.R. 1, dealing with voting rights, make sure every American has the right to vote, deal with dark money in our election process, campaign finance reform, dealing with redistricting reform. So it's the people who are deciding, not the politicians, who are deciding what the districts are. And we dealt with ethics. In addition to that, we passed legislation to protect the ACA and particularly pre-existing conditions. We're working on, Stephanie, as you know, and 3 committees have marked up just in the last few days an issue we think the president has frankly said he agrees with, and that is bringing drug prices down for our citizens. We are paying more than any other country in the world. We are addressing that. We're going to be considering that quite possibly the next work session. We have passed legislation on comprehensive gun control to make sure that the violence in our communities is checked. 90% of America agrees that we ought to have comprehensive background checks. So when somebody buys a gun, we make sure they're not a criminal, not a terrorist, not a domestic abuser, et cetera, et cetera. The Senate won't bring those bills up. They won't put them on the floor under Republican leadership. So we're continuing to work. And this week alone, yes, while we're doing impeachment, we passed 2 major pieces of legislation. One, and with mostly Republican opposition, to know what foreigners are buying up our corporations or our businesses or our enterprises, so that the public will know and the U.S. will know what is Russia buying up, what is China buying up. Number one. Number two, we passed legislation to protect our elections from foreign interference. 2 major pieces of legislation. I hope the Senate takes them up. So we are doing the people's work. We also passed a minimum wage bill to make sure that people who are working who have not had a raise in 10 years don't have to be in poverty, although they're working 40 hours a week. The Senate has not taken that bill up. So we're doing a lot of very substantive legislation. We're going to continue to do so, and I expect next month we're going to take up the prescription drug bill. We're going to deal with the XM Bank, which facilitates jobs being held here in America and selling those goods overseas. We're going to be dealing with flood insurance, very important, particularly with the results of climate change. We see these storms, the rain, hurricanes, twisters. So we are doing a lot of very substantive work, while at the same time we are exercising our constitutional responsibility to ensure that the laws of this nation are not being broken and that the power of the presidency is not being abused.
Well, then that will take us to 252, possibly 253 bills awaiting Mitch McConnell. Today, Congressman, you're also going to be focused on something else. A dear friend and colleague of yours, Elijah Cummings, someone who was part of Maryland government for more than 20 years, right alongside you, and today he will lie in state in the Capitol. How will you remember him?
An extraordinary, decent, honest, passionate individual who cared about his democracy, cared about the people he represented, cared about Baltimore City and our state, but cared about our democracy. That famous statement, when we're dancing with the angels, we're going to have to answer, what did we do in this time to ensure that our democracy continues? He was an extraordinary human being, very decent, quiet, but passionate, and could be extraordinarily strong in the defense of opportunity for people, in defense of their civil rights, their human rights, in the defense of our democracy. The reason he is being so honored, because across the aisle, across the nation, the decency of this man, the civility of this man, and the principles of this man are recognized. And it is appropriate that we honor all of those traits and this wonderful man this day. And as you know, his funeral will be tomorrow in his beloved city of Baltimore. What an extraordinary way to be remembered. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me this morning. And my condolences. Thank you, Stephanie. To you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.